Mike, you have time. Thank you. Appreciate that, Mike.
Good evening, everybody. All this evening of the Board of Education. Tonight, we are going to talk with consulting firms for our superintendent. Our first firm joining us here this evening. I'm going to turn it over to Mike to explain our scoring process. Each board member will ask a question this evening. In order to be consistent, we won't ask follow-up questions. The other thing is that we're going to manage time thoughtfully in order to get to the next conversation. So, Mike.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to everybody watching at home and welcome to board members. It's always good to be with you. And thank you, board, in advance for all the difficult work you're doing in choosing a search firm to select our next superintendent. So to recap for the public watching tonight, you know that the board reviewed the previous RFP for a superintendent, made adjustments to it. It was sent out and we got 4 proposals. Our board at the section selected 3 of them to interview, and those interviews tonight. The board has carefully reviewed these proposals and is excited to meet the firms that are servant. Our major purpose for tonight is to listen to those presentations and each firm collect information to assist the board in choosing the search firm. The next step in the process will be for the board to meet after they meet with all 3 firms to meet in closed session to collect information and make a decision on who they want to choose as our search firm. And they will reconvene an open session and make that recommendation and vote on that. Following that, we'll connect with the search firm to develop a contract. And eventually we'll set up a meeting with the search firm once the contract has been approved and is in place. So then we'll continue on the very important task of searching for our next superintendent. And just a reminder, as we go through this, our board is committed to transparency and open communication with this search. The board makes the very important decision of who to hire for the superintendent. The engagement of the public in the processes is and has always been critical to our work. So we look forward to hearing that input will first likely occur as we develop a leadership profile for our new superintendent. So now moving forward, I would remind the board, and for those of you at home, the presentation will have 15 minutes from the firm presenting. And we have sent them some questions in advance so that they tailor the presentation to MMSD. And then after that, our Board of Education will ask some additional follow-up questions. So thank you for being here tonight, and I'll turn it back over to the President for any final words before we introduce the first.
I think part of our goal this evening is to kind of have the greatest possible understanding of how we can work together and engage the community throughout this process. The other thing I think we want to be transparent about is that this is a singular step in vetting potential partner in this work. And behind the scenes, there's a series of additional steps, including reference checks, and work done by the board specifically to identify not only who can do this work, in service of our community, but also who is the best fit for the greater community. So thank you for joining us this evening, and we'll get started.
Wonderful. And I just have a question. Can the audience see and hear me okay? Because I don't have a mic or a camera on.
The mic's in the room, you should be okay.
Okay.
think they can see you too, unless you want to do your laptop, but
Whatever you prefer.
I don't think it necessarily makes a difference.
Okay. What's that? Take it
I
out?
think it would be nice if, yeah.
If you mind, it's gonna say my name.
Okay, that's fine. Okay. Hello, everybody. All right. Usually I'm the one virtual and I'm a big busybody head at the top of the room. But thank you, Mike.
Yeah.
All right, so shall I begin with my presentation? And do we have it up for display?
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Well, good evening, everyone. As I shared earlier, my name is Monica Santana Rosa. I'm the CEO and founder of Alma Advisory Group. And thrilled to be with you all today to share a little bit about Alma, who we are, and as Ali said, how we would support the board and the district in this important process. So just a little bit about Alma Advisory Group. Alma was founded 6.5 years ago. We are a mission-driven organization, and everything that we do is about helping organizations create the conditions where everyone can do their best work. That's what we're about. So we've worked with school systems like Madison Metropolitan District in its work to align its hiring systems, recruitment, development systems in support of the organization's values and those core competencies most important for success for students. We've been working all across the country with districts, with nonprofits, and we do both consulting, where we will come in and help a school system redesign a particular process or aspect of the organization, as well as executive search, which is what we're talking about today. In addition to that, Alma leads a great amount of leadership team facilitation and coaching as part of our work as well. You might see some familiar faces here on the team dedicated to this search. There are 2 team members that are former Madison employees. I would be leading this search myself, and we bring a strong, diverse, talented group of leaders who are all practitioners in our work. We've sat in the seats of leaders in school systems looking to strengthen service and supports for students. We would have a team that would bring a focus on community engagement, on recruitment of talented, diverse leaders for the district, and facilitating your work in your decision-making. Thank you. So there are a few areas that you asked us to speak more specifically about, but I want to tell you what makes Alma different as a choice to lead your superintendent search. The first is our focus on authentic community voice and transparency. So what we say every chance we get is that the people with the most at stake with any decision shouldn't just get to have input. They should have a seat at the table. They should be driving the conversation. They should be guiding the work because they're the ones closest to the impact. And so for us, the community engagement is not a checkbox. It is woven through every aspect of our superintendent search. We want to start by understanding from the community what is important to them. What are your staff seeing as the biggest needs? What are your students and their families saying that they're looking for? We want to sit down and hear their lived experiences and then come and share with you in a public forum what we heard and what we think it means for your search overall. We use that input to guide our job profile, which I'll talk about in a moment. And then we work with the board to understand how you want to engage transparently with your community. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. The second is that we're very focused on developing with you an anti-racist hiring process that mitigates bias every step of the way. That requires a great deal of intentionality and awareness that we build with every conversation that we come together. The third piece is that everything we do is tied to competency, and I'll talk about that in a moment. We want your candidates to have the opportunity to show you who they are and how they make decisions based on what you all agree are the skills most needed for the role. Then you can make your decisions with your eyes wide open. No candidate is perfect. We expect you to discover things that are natural strengths for your candidates and things that may be challenges, and to have a thoughtful plan as you bring in your next leader for how you'll support them as a result. And finally, our facilitation and our work with the board. This is a shining strength for Alma. It's something that board members will reflect after our process together. The fact is, we're all human beings engaging in a decision that is the most important decision you make as a board. It is high stakes at the highest level. And it requires that from the day one, you all are clear on your shared purpose, that you all understand each other's points of view, and that you know where your common ground is in this decision. We also know that diverse teams as yours make better decisions together. But in order to do that, we have to elevate all the voices. They all have to be heard and respected and listened to. So we create shared rules of engagement, build on the practices you already have in place. But Alma sees ourselves in this process as your partners in that, your critical friends. We're available around the clock. Each one of you will have my cell phone number. You're all volunteers working and living your lives outside of this process. So we're available when you're available, and we work hand in hand with you throughout the process. Okay, so there were a few questions that you wanted us to tackle, and I'm going to move through these fairly quickly. The first is around the focus on race and equity. And this is a place where Alma continues to learn every day. What we see is that you cannot eliminate bias. You cannot eliminate those things that tend to hurt women and leaders of color in processes like these. But you can build awareness about the ways in which our own social conditioning, our own lived experiences influences how we receive candidates. So we work first by clarifying the skills needed for the role. And then we screen for those skills and those skills only. What you get is a hiring process that is both more rigorous and challenging, and where every single time more leaders of color emerge as finalists. And the only reason is you focus on competencies, clears away a lot of the noise that tends to hurt leaders of color in processes like this. We insist on delivering anti-bias training to any interviewers that participate in the process, and we expect and hope that you will have interviewers participating at least at the finalist stage that go beyond the board. We want to meet with anyone who's engaging, ensure they understand the competencies you've prioritized, and that they receive that same training. The final thing is we're very accountable to deliver a diverse pool of candidates for you. And we keep that, we monitor it every stage of the process. So we will go back, and if it seems like we're missing something, we want to go out and find the candidates that are missing. Now, we know diversity isn't just race and gender, but we wanted to share with you some of our numbers here. Our finalists that we have presented have been majority leaders of color, just shy of 70% leaders of color. Those selected by our clients have been 80% leaders of color. Finalists have been over half female, and hires have been over half female, in an environment where the statistics don't match this at all. We feel this is a demonstration of what happens when you lead a process that is managing and mitigating the things that cause that hurt underrepresented individuals in other processes. Next slide. You asked for me to talk about community engagement and transparency. Now, I talked a little bit already about how important this is to us. What I want to share is that we work very closely with the board and district staff to understand the channels that already exist to reach out to community, we often have to go to the people rather than expect them to come to us. But we don't necessarily have that information when we come through the door. So we work with the district staff and board members to identify who are the champions out there, who are your allies, who might make those connections for us, and then to spread the word as far and as wide as we can to make sure that people know all the different ways they can participate. We share the candidate profile and the results of our input publicly. We would expect to do on-site community meetings, virtual community meetings, and a community survey. We would then work with you to use that information, partner it with what you all already know to build a profile that really reflects what's most important in NMSD right now. We also want to note, a big point of pride for myself as a child of immigrant parents is that I can lead meetings in Spanish where individuals don't need translation. They can speak in their own language and not require translation. We will also look to understand all of your communities, the Hmong communities, the other Asian communities, to understand how do we ensure we have language translators where needed, that materials are translated, and that all accommodations and modifications are made for all kinds of individuals and abilities that may want to have a voice in this process. We also monitor data to understand exactly what we're seeing in terms of representation. And if certain groups are underrepresented, we will extend deadlines. We will work to make sure we're hearing those voices. Just a couple more slides. I know I'm close on time here. Want to talk about the relationship between the board and the firm. I think I've talked about this a little bit already, but we start with very intimate conversations. As a facilitator, it's my job to create an environment where there is safety and ability to speak openly about the challenges that we expect to find as we're going through this process. We also see our job as bringing you a strong pool of candidates, but also guiding you through an anti-biased hiring process. In terms of the board, I mentioned earlier, we look to you to help inform how and best to engage stakeholders, to ensure we've got the right channels of communication, to engage with media wherever needed, to respond, and to actively participate in every aspect of the design of the process. So we will work with you to design the interview activities. We'll work with you to create the job profile. We want all board members to participate in every step. And finally, candidate identification and recruitment. And what I want to share here, and I'm going to say competency like 80 times tonight, but once we know what those competencies are, that's how we find candidates. So first we go out and we research who are the leaders out there doing this work with a proven track record that aligns with the results you're looking for in your school system. We are not bound by specific affiliation or experiences in terms of, are we looking for people who've already been superintendents, as an example? What we found is that in an Alma search, the candidates we bring forward tend to be unexpected because they don't fit the paper profile of what maybe boards are looking for. But when you sit down and meet with them, you get that at their heart, they understand what this district is about, and they believe and have carried out the skills that you have prioritized and want most in your next leader. So we take a very open approach. We go out and find people through our own networks, through our national recruiting that are aligned to your mission, vision, and values, and to the competencies that you want to attract. We seek a diverse candidate pool. We look at gender, race, sexual orientation, lived experience, and really are looking to bring you a broad group of candidates because for us, the competencies are at the heart. And when you're focused on the competencies, a lot of other affiliation that tends to eliminate underrepresented groups are sort of set to the side for this process. So I'm at time. I have other information to share that are examples, but I've answered the questions you have. I'd love to pause here. And if the other slides hit the questions, I'm happy to jump around wherever helpful.
Oh, sorry, allergies.
No.
If you want to go ahead and ask.
Oh, the follow-up, yeah. Do you provide sign language interpretation?
So we typically will work with district staff for all of the appropriate translation services beyond Spanish. We typically would request translate sign language support, and but normally we would work with the district to arrange that.
Oh, yeah, of course. Sorry, Miss. Oh, you want that one? Please describe your approach to working with the Board of Education to update the community throughout the search on progress made. And let me start over, please, because I could not read that right. Please describe your approach to working with the Board of Education to update the community throughout the search on progress made and identifying our next superintendent.
Thank you. That's an excellent question. It's one of the first things that we do together is to think about what are the priorities that you have set? What does transparency look like for this board? It has been in the past. We know already from the RFP that is a top priority, but also from your past practice as a board. What I will say is there are a set of recommendations that we make. We want to start from day one, working with district communication staff to understand the channels that already exist, but also with the board. And then we work intentionally with you to understand when are the best times to go to media, to go to news outlets, to go to radio stations, wherever we think the community will be that will listen and hear the message that you want to share. This has varied from district to district. In Denver, we did weekly FaceTime live streams with the board president and myself in Spanish and English so that whoever was interested could chime in and learn what was going on. And we almost always have a place on the website that we're updating on a regular basis. But in different communities, there's different nuance and things that the board does, and we work with you. Our goal is to ensure broad engagement at the front end, clear communication throughout the search process, and then when we're narrowing the field of candidates in the end, to identify the ways in which you want community voice to participate in providing you feedback on your candidates.
I think working with the community is essential.
Laura will be able to ask the next question.
How will you identify individuals who are excellent candidates for MMSD that will not be found through self-identification or other traditional hiring practices? I want to recognize you've already answered this, but I want to give you a chance to give us more detail.
Thank you for that, and nice to meet you, and to you and all the other members on the line. So what I would start by saying is, first of all, once we're presenting candidates, it's kind of important to know that we don't, when we're presenting candidates, we don't really care where they came from. If they found us themselves, if we went and convinced them to apply, they have met the bar and they're all fully qualified. That said, We find our candidates, I would say, through three primary channels. The easiest one is the one you're most familiar with, which is posting a job description where we think our candidates will find it, where people who are looking might be looking. But to your question, how we find the unknown candidates, the ones who might not be looking for an opportunity right now, is by going through First Hour Network, which is vast and national and international in some cases, and actually talking to leaders about the competencies the board has prioritized and asking them who they know that has represented those things. That's how we kind of work like branches of a tree and get out and find people that are usually unknown or unexpected, but have that proven track record. The third piece is oftentimes you all yourselves as board members will have individuals you know, or connections, or people you've seen in other conferences or formats that you say, hey, I'd like to learn more about these individuals. And we will go out and find them and talk to them and find out what they have and what their interests are. In a search, as a recent search, as a point of example, we've got over 100 applicants in one particular search. We had outreach to over 400 leaders that we thought showed potential in some regard. And from there, amassed the group of candidates who ultimately applied and are now making their way through the process. So we have a lot of informational conversations with leaders. We don't shy back from the facts because these are people who will know where to find us once they get the job, but also because we want to make sure the person you get is the right fit for the organization. So we have a lot of dialogue with individuals to understand who they are, what they bring, but also for them to understand what Madison Metropolitan Schools has to offer. And that's how we kind of close the gap and get people converted from, someone who might be interested to an actual candidate for the role.
Thank you. How would you translate our candidate profile into a job description?
The candidate profile is the job description for us. So the candidate profile will have up at the top in our format, usually there's an overview about the district, a summary about the role. There are the key responsibilities, the things you want the person to carry out, and the competencies required. And then any requirements in terms of experience, that background experience. So we've used the terms interchangeably, but the thing we create as the profile is what ends up getting posted publicly.
Okay. As a follow below or would you be able to help us find methods to measure those competencies?
Yes, that's our superpower. So we want to clarify first what those skills are, and then we want to create a performance-based process where you're able to see individuals demonstrate those skills. We'll work with you, we'll actually train the board in how to develop those, we'll create them together. They're specific to you and your district and your experiences here. As some of those will be informed by community engagement as well. We use those to create processes that you feel confident, measure the skills that you're looking for, and then we work with you to facilitate your debriefing process so that you're able to talk about what you learned about the candidate and how it ties to the things that we're looking to measure.
Thank you.
I has the next question, but I think you pretty much answered it. You want to ask the next question, see if there's any.
It is Chris.
Chris.
Yeah.
Sure. Briefly describe the pros and cons of two hiring timeline options. Having a superintendent in place before the start of the 2023-24 school year versus the process taking more time and hiring at another point during the school year.
I love that question because I think we wrote in our proposal that we see as an opportunity. We see that as a decision point for the board. And what I would say is there are a few things you have to consider. The first is the time of year. We're sitting at mid-April right now. And your candidate pools are waning with every week because your candidates are making commitments to their current organizations. And anyone who's going to be a strong candidate for Madison, whatever the role they're in, they are adding a lot of value in that role. And so their departure is going to be tricky for them to navigate as well. What we want to do as we start the recruiting process is to see what the responsiveness is from the candidate pool. So one of the things we're looking for is, wow, is it feeling like we're past the time that we're going to have a strong pool for this year or not? If you feel like you're past the time, or it seems from our recruiting, then the idea of naming an interim officially through the next year, giving yourself that runway to allow to enter the next peak hiring season might be worth considering. We're actually working with 2 districts that are going through their process right now. I think this particular hiring season is different from typical years. We have superintendents resigning right now on a regular basis. I think there are a lot more resignations this year, also a lot more openness to moving than we've seen in previous hiring cycles. So it's possible that the timing won't be an issue. That said, a typical search process for us runs about 4 months, and our superintendent searches have all fairly well fit in that window, and that should get you right around the start of the school year. And then the question is how soon the person can make that transition. The last consideration that I think you will want to consider is the potential disruption to the staff and to schools, depending on the timing you think you're going to have a transition of leader. And so sometimes having somebody that everyone knows, this is what it's going to be for now, let's take our time and make sure we do this right, brings a little bit of relief to people that they can focus on their work. They know what they can count on, rather than being in a world of, we have no idea what's going to happen this summer, if we're going to have someone or not. So in both those regards, it does mean whatever path you take, we want to make those decisions intentionally, and we want to be communicating a little more if we're going the faster route rather than the slower route, so that everyone understands what's happening as you go along.
May I ask one follow-up with that?
Absolutely.
What would the extended timeline look like? I'm trying to understand, is there just one hiring window for superintendents, or the ideal one, or is there another time during the school year that would work also?
So our searches tend to kind of, do you mean what a typical timeline is, or what it would be if we extended?
What it would be if we extended?
I think if we,
No, that's the question.
I think if we extended, I think we still want to carry out the community engagement now before the school year closes, to have all of the insight about what the community is telling us. It might give you more time for community engagement if you know you're extending your timeline. We typically it's like the first month of the search for us is focused on community engagement. If we had an extended process, we would likely be supporting you through the decision around interim and what that might look like, and the announcement of that person. It wouldn't be in our scope to help you select necessarily an interim, but we certainly would advise you on that. Then, Alma's always going to be recruiting, so we would certainly continue recruiting, but our expectation would be that you're sort of sliding things down from a activity level on the search and picking it up after the start of the school year, likely in October, after the start of the school year has sort of settled, and where your candidates are going to be engaging around the possibility of a future search. One thing about that kind of runway, sometimes it opens you up to candidates, individuals now who are thinking about a transition a year from now, you can actually begin those conversations now with them, and we kind of have them in the, waiting until things really pick up with the search. I really think both possibilities could work. I think the decision is really going to come down to what's in the best interest of the community, of the staff. The current context matters a great deal. Having a leader in place sooner might be more critical for the stability that you want in your environment, or having everything settled for a year, knowing we're going to take our time with it, might be more comforting. So it really depends on what's going to be best given your current situation. Thank you.
Hey, from Maya over here on Zoom. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person. I've been a little under the weather. So I know Savian asked a question just around the profile, job description, and the ways in which we can work with you on measurable expectations. So still within the same vein of that, if you can describe the support for the board to the onboarding process of the new superintendent. I think you've kind of alluded to it, but if you can describe a little more in depth, that'd be great.
Yes. So this is something we care a great deal about, because how your leader is introduced to the community can affect their entire tenure with the district. So we care a great deal about how you learn about the candidate at every step, how you treat the candidate at every step, what evidence and information you take into account at every step. That said, we're also managing bias every step of the way. So inevitably in our work is not just an understanding of how bias influences how your candidate might be received by the community, how you may receive the candidates, but also what happens once they're in the role and the kind of support they're going to need from you as a board, whoever they may be. And so for me, the onboarding conversation starts with us building this fluency and language together about how a board can support your next leader, and how you take the feedback and learnings from the process to inform the kinds of supports that you might need as you introduce the individual to the community, and as you think about the work that happens in the first year with your so Alma does not, our scope won't go beyond the actual introduction of the person, but and I always feel, because when I get to be there when the person is introduced to the community, like a Mary Poppins kind of popping up my umbrella and kind of flying off and leaving the district behind. But every step of the way, we're thinking about what we're learning. And our last conversation together is, how do you take what you've learned and apply it to your transition plan, apply it to those key early moves you make as you're introducing your leader to stakeholders, and the things that are really critical in that leader's first year. We'll talk about all of those things before, Alma closes its engagement with you.
Thank you.
All right, Monica, I think that gets us through all of our questions. So we're gonna just ask you if you have any questions for us.
So many questions. How much time do we have? 5 minutes or 10 or 20?
Yeah, plenty of time.
Okay, then,
Good amount of time.
okay, good, fantastic. My first important question for you all, as you think about this process, what are the things that you want to make sure the board gets right in selecting your next superintendent?
These are for us to answer, y'all.
I think it's I don't mind starting, and then I guess we do like a round robin. I will say, no matter how many questions you have, like 20 minutes is a lot for the 7 of us. But I think You know, one of the most important things we can get right is engaging the community in the process. And when I say the community, I think thinking really intentionally about our educators, our principals, the folks who are with our kids every day, and doing this work. And I hope that, you know, are able to find, you know, a very collaborative leader who can come into this community and work with it in its entirety and celebrate this community in its entirety, while prioritizing the achievement of our students at school. So, I will pass to you, Board Member Castro, because you're next to me.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, I think part and parcel with engaging the community, but also in a way, educating the community in terms of expectations for an incoming superintendent. And defining what the role is of the superintendent. And then the second thing is getting that job description and performance measures right. There's been a lot of articles and research about how fraught superintendent evaluations can be. And so kind of finding a light for us in that process.
Board Member Vandermeulen.
I've been thinking, I want to do on transparency versus, I'll do a couple. When I'm looking for someone with competency with special education, especially regarding reading and the science reading. Because oftentimes that tends to be overlooked and replaced by so-called functional goals, and I worry about that. So I would like that. I also want someone who transparency is their main focus, not just what they say, but what they do. I, as an attorney, am someone who is very, very much for communication. I want the community to have as much information. Obviously, I understand there are things that are confidential, and I get that. But I want to make sure I have a superintendent who understands how important it is to be transparent instead of deciding and then letting people know at the last minute.
Board Member Thomas Schmidt.
I think I'll say that for me, making sure that the board works with the search firm to, like you said, when you were talking about the timeline, to identify the context that we're in, make sure we make the best decisions based on where we're at right now and the work that needs to be done in identifying the next leader who can move that forward in collaboration with the board.
Board Member Pearson.
Yeah, thank you. I'm kind of on board with the rest of what has been said. So thank you.
Board Member Simkin.
My thoughts are just going to the complexity of Madison as a whole and the complexity of our district. And I think that we are both beautiful in our complexity and extraordinarily challenged in it. And I think it's critical that in order to find somebody for the long term, that we find somebody who is able to recognize and embrace those layers of complexity coming in as with a mindset of being open to understanding that there are no easy fixes and being up for that challenge.
All right.
Do you have any other
So
questions?
I do, yeah. So I know that community engagement, I have a couple other questions. First, around community engagement, I'm curious what you have found to be challenging in the past, what either communities have been more difficult to reach out to or engage, or what practices you found to be the most helpful at making sure you're getting everyone to the conversation in your processes. So you could either focus on the things that have been hard or where you've seen success.
I think that this is a really interesting question, and I think it's an interesting way to think about kind of how board members exist in the community. So as a person who was born and raised in Madison, Madison gets smaller and smaller the longer you're here. And so engaging the communities that I've been a part of in Madison has always been an easier aspect of how but I think, you know, broadening how I interact with the community as a member of the school board really meant going to people's doors. It really meant sending mail to their homes, really meant making phone as easily accessible and conveniently accessible to people and taking a variety of strategies. And so, you know, during the pandemic, we had this presence online, and we continue to have a pretty substantial presence online as a district and as a board. I will ask other folks if they want to chime in. Board Member Vandervillen?
Yes, we're kind of surveyed out.
Okay,
People are getting to the point where surveys are driving people crazy because the people who end up getting surveyed are those same people all the time.
Board Member Goma-Schmidt? Nichols?
But I would say that in addition to that, maybe survey fatigue that a lot of people are feeling, we had a tremendous response to our safety and wellness survey that we sent out. And so I feel like this community does engage with topics that are of interest and important. I think with any school district, it's difficult to we engage with the communities who are closest to the schools. And it's harder to engage the whole community, the taxpayers, the people who aren't as directly connected to the schools.
Member Nichols?
Yeah, I would say that over this past year, we've spent quite a bit of energy doing land acknowledgements on many of our schools. And so we have a very active Native American parent group and student group that I know have at least reached out to the board once via email saying they would like to be included. The board just recently did some listening sessions, and at one of our schools, there was a very large Hmong presence, which was great. And we do have a dual language program for Hmong speaking students. And so I think that is a group that should definitely be included. We've had over the years some really active partnership with our Latino community. And I think that there are also strong interest in being included in this process. And then there are several Black-led organizations that I think would want to be included. I do think one of the things that will be something to consider for whomever we work with is I think that there has been a tendency to put all folks of color together, thinking that their interests are exactly the same and not thinking through more thoughtfully what community engagement with each distinct group should consider. And so I would hope that as part of a process, we're being really thoughtful about how we're bringing not just folks of color, but a variety of communities into the process and being really thoughtful.
Board Member Semken, did you still want to go?
I think Board Member Nichols covered most of what I was going to say. The only other thing I would add, I spend a lot of time in my work world with the Latino community in Madison, and just recognizing that we do have a large number of individuals in Madison who do not speak any English at all. And also that many of our different family groups or families in general may not be able to be responsive or attend during work hours. and are going to be looking for, accommodations if we want to make sure their voice is in place. We want to be doing non-work hours, maybe safer spaces where they'll feel comfortable gathering.
I'll add that Madison is not a monolith. There tend to be loud voices. It's also bifurcated by class across all identity groups, and that affects engagement. In my experience, I think we need a scientific process. Something that you stuck out to me is that you don't eliminate bias, you mitigate bias, or you acknowledge it and try to regulate bias. There have been information sessions or community public comments given where, board members and myself, we heard the exact same thing, we saw the exact same thing, but we had wildly different takeaways. And so I would like a scientific process to interpret results, being objective in social sciences is kind of a thorny hole, but some type of scientific process to interpret results.
That's exactly what we want to address. And so lots to say, but I will save my comments on that, but I really appreciate that.
Board Member Pearson, I think also wants to speak to that. Board Member Pearson.
I was just gonna say, speaking to just community in itself, thank you, Savian, for bringing that piece up though as well. Just not forgetting our students and our young people's voices. Madison is historically a place where young people are very much engaged. So ensuring that we're including them in different ways. And I agree with Nikki about the surveys. People are surveyed out, but I do think finding creative ways to include different communities, but not forgetting our young people will be important.
Board Member Vandermillen.
Yes, also, as a member of the autistic community, disability also is not a monolith, which Savian, I like that term. I think I'm going to use that for a while. But we tend to be divided on different issues, and I'd like to have them included in a lot of the focus groups, because oftentimes, for example, they'll have listening sessions and there aren't always most accessible options. Sometimes wheelchair is bigger than the entrance. Sometimes it's just not feasible, or they don't have a Zoom option, and and for someone who's immunocompromised, that's an incredible issue. So it's a combination. So just to take care to make sure that they're included, because normally we're only important the last 2 weeks before an election.
I can understand that. And I think similar, just kind of connecting also with what Laura was sharing earlier, trying to understand how to make it as easy as possible to participate is really important. And some of that is the time of day, but some of that is also the mode and the ways in which we get to meet with people. And that's different every place that we get to be. So we look forward to exploring that and, either finding things that have worked in the past or finding new things for this particular process. A lot of it's a little different everywhere, but most people connect with their schools through their teacher, their classroom teacher, their principal, the school in their community. That's what they know best. I appreciated Savian's comment about Board Member Castro's comment about, just even people understanding the role itself and what it means to them. A lot of times the conversation is really about, well, what's important to them? What have been their lived experiences? And how do we connect that to the job that the superintendent ultimately does? And so understanding, I think your point, Board Member Vandermillen is very well taken, that, we are going to miss things like, is the door wide open enough, or do we need to provide things in paper and not just present so that everyone can participate in the best possible way? So we look forward to having those conversations with you all and with your community as well.
moving forward.
We have kind of time for one last
We do.
very quick question.
5 minutes, so.
Yeah.
All right. Do you have
Alright.
one last question for us or any additional information you'd like? It's time for.
Thank you. Yes, I am just kind of looking through quickly. I think I really just have a final statement that I want to say. I think we've talked through just about everything that matters from in terms of what we wanted to share about Alma's approach and process. You know, Madison has been a part of my work world for a long time, though it's been several years since I've engaged with the district. But the last thing I did was actually working with the board, the previous board, as you were embarking on the last superintendent's search. Before that, got to engage in a lot of the work that was going around improving recruitment and hiring practice, looking at school leader pipelines, and just a lot of impressive work that the district carried out here. So I just kind of want to close by conveying to you all that for Alma, this is purpose-driven work. This is our purpose. We're here, we're living our purpose in helping you find your next leader. It's not just a job. And it's very personal to my company. Alma is synonymous with the people that work in it, but we bring a lot of ourselves to this. And even more so because we've been a part of this district in different ways. So I feel I'd be remiss if I didn't just share that before I walked out. But just so grateful for your thoughtfulness in this process and the opportunity to sit in real life in person and share. I want you to know that I'm available anytime, anything you need, any further questions as you continue through your decision-making process.
Thank you
so much.
so much.
All right, thank you too. Best of luck.
We have 15 minutes for you to look through your notes, begin scoring. Scoring whether the answers are fit within Madison, so 6:15 we'll start the next one. Go on.
But
Excel spreadsheet.
it's the
Yes. That I can do.
Thank you.
Betsy, can you room, please?
Sorry, could you repeat that, Maya?
I'm just saying I can
I hope
hear
you get to enjoy the weather.
conversations if you want to mute.
the temperature
I heard you.
Yes, the
saying
stupid
that-
cat.
Thank you all so much for joining us. We're gonna start with your question. We wanted to ask you all and also, you want to share with us. Each board member will ask you all questions, and then if there's a little bit of time, you'll have time to engage with the board and answer your own questions.
Great, all right, well, and we have 15 minutes, correct? Is that what you're shooting for, 15 minutes? Okay, I'm sure I started my watch here, so we will not go over. Well, thank you for having us. My name is Mike Ritchie, we represent HYA. And Pat Newdicker is with me, and I believe Sean Joseph is on Zoom, who's another member of our team. And we're not going to go through introductions, they're all in your proposal. We're going to get right to what you want to answer. So as we look at the slides, the community engagement piece, the communication, but are you advancing the slide? Okay, perfect. One more, please. One more. There you go. So our community engagement is a big piece of what HYA does. We're really known to get the community involved, get your stakeholders involved. And how we start the process is we will spend time with the board planning meeting. And then what we'll do is we'll interview individual board members, all board members. And then at that planning meeting, we will together come up with a plan. Are there other people in the community you want us to interview? And then we try to brainstorm for what focus groups you want us to address. And we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. And then we have a stakeholder survey that is very robust, and we look for those strengths of the district, the challenges of the district, and then what characteristics you're looking for in your next superintendent. We take all of the information that we gather throughout the community and we put together a very, very detailed district leadership profile report. And in that report, we really try to make it so it's the right fit for the next superintendent. And so what we're looking for is that right fit. We're looking for someone long-term, someone that's going to fall in love with Madison, someone who wants to be in this district. And it's all about matching that district profile report that we put together based on what your constituents and what your stakeholders have said to us throughout those focus groups and all of those different interviews. Next slide, please. So what we do is we'll start off by doing a number of different focus groups, and these are a combination now. So we'll do face-to-face, and when COVID was in its peak, we only did Zoom focus groups. So prior to COVID, we only did in person. COVID hits, we went all Zoom. So now, post-COVID, what we found is during COVID, Zoom was a big success. We had lots of participation through Zoom. So now we do a combination of face-to-face and Zoom as well. We go to various locations, and we even allow the constituents or stakeholders to give us information through email feedback as well. And again, we're looking for those strengths, the challenges, and the characteristics you're looking for in your next superintendent. Flexible meeting times, we will meet morning, afternoon, evening, day, weekend. We try to do what's best for your community. As an example, the parent focus group, a great time is Sunday night, 7 p.m. There's usually no activities going on for their kids. They're getting ready for the week, and they can sit in their living room and for 45 minutes to an hour participate in a focus group. So in our planning meeting, we will also go through with the board and what groups do you want us to focus on for focus groups. And so you're going to have your staff, your support staff, your licensed staff, your administrators, your business leaders, your partners, your parents, civic groups, booster clubs, PTO, band boosters, you name it. We will do focus groups with anyone that you insist. The one group that we do insist on meeting with is high school students. We make sure that we'll hit all your high schools, and we want a good cross mixture of your students. We don't want all National Honor Society students. We want to see your at-risk, your special ed population, your bright students, your athletic students, your arts, fine arts students. We want to see everybody in that focus group. And then the students usually give us some really good feedback as well. And then that diversity and inclusiveness, we really try to reach all community members, stakeholders, and then we can coordinate those focus groups in various different languages. I'm just finishing up the Aurora search, and we had one focus group. We had 3 different languages going at the same time. And so I think I'll get to a slide here in a second, but they have many languages across their district. So the other thing that we do with the community engagement, now next slide, please, is we do a very detailed survey, research-based, norm reference. Again, we can add any language that you would like to the survey. And what we try to come up with in this survey is looking for those leadership traits. And that first slide on the left just talks about, I think they're given about 15 different options to pick from. And we try to get, what are the top 4 for each of the subgroups. You are allowed 6 different subgroups. So you're going to probably have your administrators, your licensed staff, your support staff, your students, your parents, and then your community members, people without students in the district as well. So that gives us a pretty good cross mixture. And then that bottom right slide talks about the state of the district. Those dots represent each individual subgroup. And what you want, if everyone's on the same page, they think the same about your district, those dots are closer together. The further apart those dots are, then one subgroup might have a different opinion of the district for whatever reason. And this becomes a great roadmap for your new superintendent, because then they can dig into deeper all the analytics and see what they should be addressing and why these people might be on a different page. Next slide, please. So again, continuing with that focus group and the engagement, what we also do is once you get down to your finalists, you're going to have each person has a day in the district. And then this is our feedback form. So we do all our meet and greets the day in the district. All of your constituents or your stakeholders who participate, they're going to give you feedback on each of your finalists. And then what happens is that feedback goes instantaneously right to the board. And you'll have a spreadsheet and you'll be able to see real time the responses that come in. And again, we emphasize this is the board search. So we do not want individuals ranking. We don't want these groups picking your superintendent, but we want them giving you feedback. So on this form, they're going to give you feedback, and it's going to be what strengths would this person bring to the district? And then it would be, if this person were hired, what would concern you if this person were hired? And they give you all kinds of feedback, and you get that in real time. So next slide, please. And this is what you will see. This is an actual real example. We just took some names out. So you're going to be able to see what that feedback looks like on each individual. And then if you look at the very bottom, this was an example from Aurora, Colorado. I'm just finishing that search right now, and you can see the different languages in the bottom. So each tab has a different language, and we work with your communications department, or you have a translation department, or people that are expertise in certain languages that we'll work with to make sure that we get all of your stakeholders involved with this. Next slide, please. So when we talk about diversity, we talk about, larger districts. Our experience is we have a lot of experience working with urban school districts, large school districts. As I mentioned, I'm the lead in the Aurora search. They're down to their finalists. That's going to end next week. Aurora is a lot like Madison. And so when you do the comparison, it's a little bit bigger. It's 39,000 kids. So it is a little bit bigger. But we talk as an example, I'm not going to go through all the demographics. But one I want to share with you is the different languages. We know that Madison speaks roughly 100 different languages. Aurora speaks 160 different languages. And so you can see there's a pretty good comparison amongst the two school districts. Next slide, please. And this just shows that we have done very large districts as well. So I'm not going to go through this. And then I did get a quote from the Aurora board president and our work that we're doing with that. They're very pleased with the process in HYA as a search firm. Next slide. When we talk about transparency, what we want to make sure that we do is that we'll insist that you have a search website. We'll work with your webmaster to get all of the information. And I don't know if I have enough time, but if you click on that link, you'll see the Aurora website, so you can kind of see what what is out there or what they're doing on their website. But we want to be as transparent as possible. So everything that we do goes onto your website for your residents to be able to see. And then the first round of interview, again, you have to respect the laws of each state. So if you have more than 6, those names are confidential in Wisconsin. So those would probably be a closed session once you narrow that down to finalists, and then the public becomes involved. Those names are released. You could put the resumes on your website if you wish. You can give your public all kinds of information on those finalists. And then you as a board have a choice to do those final interviews in open or closed session. But again, if you want that transparency, it's the board's call. And we'll talk more about other things that we do with the board as we get going further in the presentation here. So the next slide, please, and Pat's going to take over from here.
It's in the room.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. You may notice that our presentation is organized in your key areas that you asked us to respond to. So I would like to share with you some of our thoughts and commitments on questions you had about race and equity. The first slide, slide 13, shows you our commitment. And obviously that's important as a company and also as consultants. Our commitment to walking the talk of equity is very strong. We have a close relationship with AASA, the National Superintendent Organization, as well as ALAS, the Latino Administration and Superintendents, as well as NABC, the Association of Black School Leaders nationwide. I share with you my relationship with AASA, not because of me, the person, but because of the networking that's allowed me to develop. I was fortunate to be elected president of AASA in 2013. It's an election by peers from 50 states. I was the 3rd female since 1865. So I will tell you, I learned a lot, and I learned also to check our assumptions because often they're not correct. I don't believe that we were eliminated. There weren't a lot of women in the superintendency in past years. So I think those things are changing and we're very aware of that. I also am one of 5 judges that judges the National Superintendent of the Year Award. I read 50 applications from each state. And again, I'm only bringing this up not because of me, but because of the networking that it's allowed me to continue, even in my retirement from a superintendency, to promote and support our field and the people in it. And a very close relationship there. AASA has done tremendous work in developing cadres and academies for underserved populations. We have one for urban superintendents, one for aspiring superintendents in the Latino population. And I was part of the group that started the cadre and the Academy for Women's Leadership as well. That has helped us stay very, very networked and very committed to supporting our field, making sure we have great people in our schools nationwide. Next slide, please. I'll also tell you that we are all continually learning on how to use our processes and our knowledge in our continuous learning on how to reduce bias, not only in our own interviewing, but in our applications, in the work we do, and especially in recruiting. To me, this slide speaks volumes about the difference between knowing something and doing something. I think I personally have grown up with a strong commitment towards respect for all people, but then that's knowing, and then knowing what to do about it is, I think, also a very, very important component of our search. And you'll see there too, where we're protective, while we're trying to be inclusive, we're also protective of the individual's rights, which you would understand as well. The next slide, please. You asked some questions about the board and firm relations. We are available to you 24/7, Mike and I. We can answer or put you in touch with any information you might need. We prefer to communicate with one board member, as you would understand, that you would determine, rather than having all kinds of information shared across your full board, which sometimes can get us in the weeds in some policy issues. We're careful with that. We also have a board portal. You have 24/7 access through your own password protected portal, which has all the information in it, candidate information, interview information, all the data we have 24/7. So it is our commitment to you that you have accurate information to be informed and make the right decisions. In that portal, on slide 16, you'll see sections for the 4 phases of our procedure: engagement, recruitment, selection, and transition. And it tells you the types of things that we would place in that portal for you. Everything from meeting notes, survey responses, schedules, interviews, all the way up to selection, interview, candidates, information, everything. Again, I bring that up because those are important for networking and for also communicating. Sections I believe you asked a lot about. Next slide, please. Also, candidate identification and recruitment, you asked, and the next one too. Thank you. The major majority of our associates are retired superintendents with experience in their states across our whole United States. We have a very robust website. We post obviously all of our positions, but HYA, I believe, is one of the only firms that posts everybody's position. That drives a lot of traffic to our site. So people in the field know if you're looking for a position, you look on the HYA website. We can also provide you with those analytics at any time to tell you who's looking at your posting, who's looking at your website, how many hits you're getting, where they're coming from, et cetera.
Next slide, please. And you can see the analytics in the upper right-hand corner.
And that leads into the next. Mike and I attend national conferences. We work the HYA booth to stay connected with superintendents who are looking, as well as school board association members who are curious about the search process. You realize most school boards don't do superintendent searches, so it's usually new to everybody. And there's a slide on number 19 that shows you a little bit about how you would receive analytics.
So just wrap it up here quickly. You can go to the next slide. So this is our last 3 searches. Like I said, we're just finishing Aurora. They've got it down to the 3 finalists. They finish up Monday night. You can see those on the left. The person in the middle is your neighboring school district. This could be good or bad because we did take him out of your school district. So yeah, he's a great guy, being very successful right now in Verona. Sorry to mention that, but that's where he is right now.
Fit for that.
And then second on this last person from South Sioux City, it is a huge meat packing plant, a very heavy Latino population. And when we did our student focus group, what they said was, the student said this: find someone that's walked in our shoes, find someone like us, find someone that can live the life that we live and has experienced what we've experienced. Well, their superintendent is a Latino and bilingual. So it was a perfect fit for that district. I said earlier, it's all about the right fit. It needs to be about the right fit. What's best for Madison? Next slide, please. And we're about done here. So this timeline, we do the planning meeting with the board. We will go through this timeline. This is just an example. It's your search, it's your timeline, but we'll sit down and we'll go through this with you as well. Next slide, please. And then we just, again, talk about the right fit. It needs to be someone who's going to carry on your mission, your strategic framework, what you've done so far, to keep that going in the positive direction. And next slide. I believe we are done. That was quick.
Take a breath.
That was quick. Your RFP was very long. 15 minutes was very quick. So, and I know you'll have a number of questions for us. So we are hopefully ready to answer those questions.
Please describe your approach to working with the Board of Education to update the community throughout the search on progress made in identifying our next superintendent. I know you spoke some on that, but if you'd like to elaborate further.
We're in contact with you, as we say, throughout the whole process, and with you, we decide when and how much information you want shared with you. Obviously, once things come to you as the board and are accepted as the board, they are public documents, so we're aware of that. And there are different phases in the search whereby you might want some things more confidential, obviously interviews and interview data. But we're really pretty good at that, and we will work with you to determine how, when, and how much you'd like shared.
Would you work with the whole board or just one?
We represent and work with the board. We like to communicate with one person so that we don't violate open meeting conversations and things like that. We're pretty sensitive to making sure the board has the information that they need, but being cautious not to cross that line that would get us all in some difficulty.
Now, is Sean able to participate as well through Zoom? Is he, okay, so Sean, if you,
Should-
I just want to make sure you realize that you can, if you, one of these questions here, if they come up, and please jump in as well. It was hard during the presentation to have, but I want you to hear from Sean as well.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, perfect. That's really
There
good.
you are.
That's
Good.
really good.
Coming through. Is
and
that sufficient?
that is an excellent answer. And then just, I had asked a question to the other one, so I have to ask it to you as
Of
well.
course.
And that is on disability accessibility for sign language interpretation. Is it able to be provided, or do you use ours?
We could investigate that through our company. We usually work with the district, because assuming that you have met the needs of your population, we work with your district and your support and resources to make that happen.
Thank you.
Okay, next question. I'm up on the screen. Hi. How would you identify individuals who are excellent candidates for MMSD that will not be found through self-identification or other traditional hiring processes?
So Sean, you want to take this one?
Sure. I think that's the secret sauce for HYA, because we're all extremely deeply connected. We know a lot of times people just don't know about the vibrant, beautiful communities, like a community like Madison, Wisconsin. So we're connected between AASA. I'm at Howard and I run the Urban Superintendent's Academy, and our counterpart is in California at USC. And then we're connected to a number of different networks. Once we have the leadership profile and we're clear about what it is you want in the profile, we actively start calling and reaching out to people to tell the Madison story. It's important because good people are comfortable where they are and aren't looking. And it's only when they're tapped and they have a trusted person that they know, and we can communicate profile and the connection to the community on why we feel it's a great match, and that's why we're reaching out. That usually has people really looking towards it. But we don't have a resume collection process. We actively recruit once we're clear about what it is the board wants and what the community has communicated they want.
Thank you.
Thank you. How will you translate our candidate profile into a job description?
So what we do with the profile is, you obviously have a job description for your current superintendent. We take the profile and we look at let me back up. So for the posting, before the profile is even written, for the posting, we work with the board to figure out what exactly you're looking for, what characteristics. So with the profile report, then we take the profile report and then we help we can take that into the job description as well. And that's something that I know your policy committees, you have a board policy committee, you have your legal counsel. I know they're very involved in updating those job descriptions. So I'm hoping the profile report is going to be about 30 pages. So you're going to find some good information in there that you want to incorporate into your job description as well for your next superintendent. Did I miss anything? I don't know if
I think that's accurate. The profile will have a 2 to 3 page summary at the end that says desirable characteristics. It's not written as a job description, but these are the characteristics that emerged as must-haves for your position. Then once we're in the interview phase, and that we can work with you to convert that, as Mike said, with your legal, with HR, however you do that, to actually infuse that into your job description.
And those characteristics in that leadership profile report, we look for common themes. So let's just say we do 15 focus groups and we do 15 individual interviews. So we don't just record if one person says something. What we really look for are common themes that are repeated in multiple interviews or multiple focus groups that we add to that report. Thank you.
Briefly describe the pros and cons of 2 hiring timeline options. Having a superintendent in place before the start of the 2023-24 school year versus the process taking more time and hiring at another point during the upcoming school year.
I can take this. So Sean, do you want this one? I can take it.
You can take it and I'll add to it.
Okay, okay.
Both.
So again, right fit. So if you, I know July 1 is typically the starting point for superintendent. And looking at your timeline, we're getting to the point now where, you know, July 1st might be really, really tight. August 1st might be doable. And so as we recruit and as we get that slate of candidates, it's going to determine, you know, when you want to have the person start. And so we will all tell you, you don't want to hire someone just to hire someone. So you can't rush the search and you have to make sure it's the right fit. And so there's a very high probability that you will get someone in place by, let's just say August 1st. However, if it's not the right fit and the board feels they want to extend that timeline, then you look into that next school year. So plan A is to hire someone August 1, somewhere in there. Plan B would be the interim for a little bit longer. And then whether it's mid-year or the following July 1, again, it's going to just depend on the process, the entire process. So
I'll just add, yeah, most recently, I was a part of the Paterson, New Jersey search, and they started in September and wanted someone appointed by December. And they accelerated that timeline on us, and we cautioned them there could be a danger. But we said, we'll go. And if we don't find anyone strong, know that you have the option to extend. And that's what we did. And we brought 5 very strong candidates. I mean, Paterson is a very tough community in New Jersey. And we found 5 highly capable candidates in that short timeline because of our aggressive, active recruitment. I mean, we just actively went out, reaching out to, they wanted a sitting superintendent, and we brought them candidates that were extremely strong, and they ended up being able to do so. But we were in position to say, look, we can aggressively try, and if we don't have a candidate slate, then we can extend it. And in that situation, they did have 5 candidates and 3 that they thought were, it was a tough choice for them because they had strong candidates. That's what I would say. But right now, I will say that there are a number of strong candidates out there that, even though we've had a number of searches in the country, I mean, a place like Madison, which is large, complex, has a multitude of diversity. It takes a certain type of person, and there are people who are in seats now who are thinking about possibilities of transitioning, and Madison would be appealing to someone who wants to be in a progressive district, in a district with, university, community. It's a nice place to be, and I think you'd have a good shot of recruiting someone and having someone interested in working with you.
I think the bottom line too is our guarantee. We are with you until you have the superintendent you want. And that's in our contract. So we can go through all kinds of things. And in the final hour, if you say this just isn't right, we actually can start the search over again. So we're with you until you have the person you need. So in one hand, you don't want to miss someone that's there right now. On the other hand, you don't want to rush it. So we'll be there with you to make sure we can do both. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all for being here tonight. My question is if you all can describe the support for the board to onboard the new superintendent, and then also setting measurable expectations that can be evaluated.
Yeah, superintendent transition is, something that we take very seriously. I think it's extremely important once the superintendent is onboarded, that there's an immediate meeting between the board and the superintendent to lay out, particularly just the first 100 days, and also to be clear about, what success would look like to get them going. I've had the pleasure of transitioning the new superintendent in Philadelphia, a district of 200,000 students, working closely with the board. So it's a combination of working directly with the board, with the superintendent to lay out the goals, and then thinking about, particularly if it's an outside candidate, I mean, they have to understand the culture of Madison. And so helping them work with the board and helping them do the political mapping is work that we do to help, what to kind of think towards in doing that. But it's critical. I mean, that those initial first 100 days in the relationship between the board and the superintendent, particularly laying out the goals and thinking about the evaluation metrics, and we can support you in thinking about that evaluation tool that you use, whether it's a state evaluation tool or it's something that you and the superintendent agree to develop together. I mean, we can be right there with you through those processes and helping you think about the key performance indicators. One of the ancillary services that HYA offers is, I don't know where you are with your current strategic plan, but if you're at the end of that plan, we can help think about the alignment between the superintendent's evaluation and that actual strategic plan, which is critical. Because ultimately a superintendent's success should be the success of the district and the key performance indicators that are important to you in your community.
Thank you.
I think that wraps up all of our initial round of questions. We're happy to entertain any questions you might have for us.
Sure. Probably a typical one, what are your concerns or your fears moving into this process? Because like we said, many boards don't go through this until you have to go through this. So it may be new for some of you. You may have lived through this. I know you've had a little bit of a turnover in the last years. So
Member Vandermill, would you like to go first?
so what are your, how can we hopefully mitigate some of those fears?
As the oldest, as a long-serving board member,
Okay.
this has been my third time doing this.
Oh.
So you tend to learn a
Good,
bunch
right,
of
right.
things, and what I've learned is, one, transparency is absolutely necessary. I worry on being as transparent with the district and with the population and public as possible. And my other is knowledge of how things work with special education, especially on the science of reading, to have actual concrete goals, because we have a growing disability population in this community. And as an autistic board member, this is something that really is of interest.
And when we speak with candidates and we speak of meeting, well, it's in all your literature,
Yeah.
it's in your mission, it's meeting individual needs so that all students can be successful. And that means all does mean all. And finding candidates who, like I said earlier, believe it, but also understand how to do it. I think that's the era we're living in, to really, really drill down and get specific about, fine, you can say you're committed. I don't mean.
Show it, but yeah,
What are you
no,
gonna do
true.
about it? How do you make this happen? I think I did look, your students with special needs are 15-16%, I think, in your
15.
district. So certainly that would be superintendent worth their position would.
I appreciate that.
John, you have any questions? John's
Other
actually.
fears
Are
with
there other board members who would like to
Sorry.
respond?
Yeah.
I do think that Board Member Castro, your hand was up. Are there any other board members who want to respond to what are fears or anxieties around the process?
I guess not fear, but the concern or priority would be is during the community engagement session is also taking that as an opportunity to educate regarding the role of the superintendent responsibilities. And also getting us on the right foot with evaluation. There's been a lot of research and just kind of articles I've read about how the evaluation process can be fraught and difficult, and many districts struggle with that. And so getting off on the right foot in that regard.
And that can certainly come down the pike as far as the engagement with your community. We become the face of your district, and we take that responsibility very, very seriously. So we act professionally. We are high on community engagement. We've done interviews in coffee shops. We've done things at people's community meetings. We've tried to meet your populations where they are most comfortable. And as Mike said earlier, during COVID, we learned a lot about Zoom. We were apprehensive But it, in many cases, removed some barriers for people and allowed people to, home and participate.
But
So,
even with this meeting, I mean, Sean's in Chicago right now at
Yeah.
a conference. And
Yeah.
without Zoom, he's not participating.
And forgive me, I'm on the board of the superintendent SIG for the American Education and Research Association, the special interest group. So I had to be here, otherwise I would be in Madison.
you're here with us. That's
Were
good.
there other board members who wanted to speak to their question, or are there other questions from any of you all, including you, Sean? Or Goma-Schmidt?
Yeah, I guess I'll say it's not a fear of a concern, but just a hope that through the process of working with a search firm, we can make sure that we're identifying the context of where the Madison School District is at right now, the work that needs to be done, and then connect that with the leader who has the skills and experience to do that moving forward. So that's not so much a concern as it is a hope, I would say.
And a goal.
Yeah.
Mhm. We have scoured your website, so we're as familiar as can be with the work that's ongoing. We saw some of your upcoming community reports on the state of certain populations in your district. So it appears that you have identifiable goals, benchmarks, certainly a commitment. And I think that will show, and I think that will be attractive to a candidate. And Madison is, we're a little biased there, but great place to live, great state, great support here for superintendents, whether it be the university or whether it be our local state organization, WASDA, or other groups like that. So if you are selecting candidates from out of state, we will be welcome.
I think what will be appealing to a prospective superintendent for Madison is the fact that, your moral imperative as a board has been clear. The work that you have done, over the past few years really focused on ensuring every student is seen, every student is, their needs are met, and that you're aggressively working towards that. That moral imperative is compelling for someone who really wants to get things right for children, in America. And there are a lot of places where, boards have reputations, right? People talk, and people would not go, give up a comfortable job they have to pursue something. But I think the work that you all have done and how you worked with your superintendent collaboratively in previous years is going to make a difference in getting a strong candidate, because that imperative, like I said, it's very clear.
Are there other board members who'd speak to the question, or? All right. Do you have any other questions for us? You have just.
Give Sean a chance. Sean, any other questions? For you?
The only question I'd have is, what do you believe would be most appealing for a candidate to that we can tell candidates? Because again, a big part of if we're your search firm is telling your story to people to get them excited. Once we know that we believe there's a match, but to get them excited because it's a two-way interview process. So what would you say would be one of the most compelling features to be the new superintendent in Madison?
I think that's such an excellent question. And I guess I would start by saying, I think one of the things that you have to, be able to appreciate and love is the greater Madison community. And Madison is an international city. It's a pretty diverse community. And it's also a community that has engaged in, thoughtful dialogue around change and transformation for a long time. And so in many ways, Madison is a community that is poised to pursue excellence, with a great deal of integrity, and a community that really wholeheartedly supports public education and believes in public education. We're a community that passed 2 historic referendums when students weren't even able to attend school, right? It was during virtual learning. And those referendums were passed at, 80%. And so I think the enthusiasm of this community for our public schools, for our educators, for our principals, for what education means in the lives of young people, but also what it means to create lifelong learners, is something that makes Madison both unique and a very like special place to be an educator. And I think Madison is a space where you're committed to this community is committed to you.
Thank you.
Need that soundbite.
I would say someone who is not afraid to break old habits. You know, someone who is not willing to do something just because that's always been done that way. And so I guess someone who's more on the cutting edge of education thought.
A little more courageous and grounded in your beliefs.
Member Goma-Schmidt?
Yeah, I guess I'll say one of the compelling features for a candidate or appealing is that, you know, the board is at the beginning of a process of really looking at its governance structure and how it is going to be working with the superintendent. It's a really good time for a new superintendent to come with together with the board to shape that, as well as a comprehensive policy review that the board is undertaking. So the work ahead poises a superintendent who joins us to help with that.
Well, I think that's appealing as well.
Board Member Simkin?
I would say, I'm going to say two overarching statements, so they don't apply to every person, but in just a big picture sense, I feel like our community has an incredibly fierce support for public education and truly, truly values what it brings to our community. And I think equally so, our community is deeply invested in getting equity right. We don't have the answers, but we are working really, really hard on it. And I think bringing in somebody who wants to do that side by side with us and help lead some of that could be a compelling job description.
The responses to that question? I'm sorry, so I see the members just went. All right. Got a couple minutes left.
I'd like to clarify one thing, if I may. We've referred several times to the best fit and bringing you a slate of the best fit. We want to make sure that you see all the candidates. So we will obviously do the legwork, and based on what we learned from you about you and your profile, we'll create probably a more desired list. But you have access to everybody.
So-
Everybody.
Great point, Pat. Thank you for bringing that up. So in the board portal, as we receive the applications, we put them into the portal. So you will see every piece of application material from every single candidate at real time. As soon as we get it, you will see it, you'll be able to review it. When we bring you the slate, what we do is we take all of the applicants that we have. Let's just say we have 30 applicants. We will tier them for you. So we'll put them in tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. So tier 1, you might have 8, 10 candidates in tier 1 that would match your profile. We as a firm believe these are the best fit that would match the profile. Tier 2, they're good superintendents, but maybe we found something, maybe there was something out there, maybe there was an issue in the last district that we want you to be aware of, and we will tell you what that issue was. And then tier 3 is just, it could be a great person, but they may not be the best fit for Madison, Wisconsin. You'll get it in that order, but we don't rank them or anything. We bring you the slate, we work with you. It's your job to narrow that down to those 6 or 8 you want to interview the first round. If we're doing our job, we're going to make your job very difficult because we're going to bring you a very strong slate, and that's what we want. We want to make your job difficult. We want to give you lots of choices, lots of good options.
Mike, can you talk about the guarantee on the candidates?
Sure, it's in the proposal. So we do have there's a 2-year guarantee that as long as the board is together and that that person will be with you for 2 years, otherwise we will redo that search at no cost other than expenses. And then we also will not recruit someone that we place for 5 years. So that's out there as well.
The other part of the recruiting and the interviewing and the transparency is if we're fortunate enough to be selected to work with you, when we do the selection, we'll also converse with you about how you would like internal candidates handled. You may have internal that you're aware of. You may have candidates you're not aware of, and there are many different ways to approach that. So we will clarify that with you as well. So we have full understanding of how you want your internal candidates handled, if you will.
And I guess to wrap it up here, you know, Sean, Pat and I, we've done a number of searches all over the US. Please check out our references and hear what other boards have to say with our work. But the only thing I caution you on is please check out searches that we did. So you're comparing apples to apples, because we feel that we do a great job. This is a great team that we brought you. And I think that we would just do a wonderful job for you. We're dedicated. Our communication is flawless. We will respond to your emails. We'll respond to your phone calls almost instantly. So you'll never have to worry about why aren't they getting back to us. We will work tirelessly for you, and we will be great communicators, and we'll be very thorough in our search process.
Thank you all so much for joining us this
We have
evening.
fun too.
We do. We have fun.
We like
Yeah.
doing this. So
Yeah.
we want great folks in Wisconsin too, so.
And we both live in Wisconsin. We've both been superintendents in Wisconsin. So we have a vested interest as well. I was 25 years. I spent 15 years of my career in Eagle River, Wisconsin, right next to Rhinelander.
Yep.
And I spent some time in New London, in Hurley as well. So right now I was finishing up an interim. And so I've been in Amherst for the past 5 years doing a 5-year interim, and 25 years.
5-year interim.
5-year interim. Can't give it up.
My career's been in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, and superintendent in Oconomowoc. And when I retired from Oconomowoc, I designed a leadership program for MSOE as well as Alverno College, which is a very strong Hispanic population. And I'm proud to be a Badger. I'll throw that in, and I'm very proud to be serving my 3rd term on the Dean's Advisory Board for the School of Ed. So I try and stay connected and try and support our profession.
It's your PhD from Madison. That's what I thought. And mine was from Edgewood College.
And maybe
And I just say, yeah, I spent 17 years in Montgomery County Public Schools right outside of Washington, D.C. I left the district supervising 34 schools in their most diverse part of the district right next to Washington, D.C. Then I became a small district rural superintendent in Seaford, Delaware, before becoming the deputy superintendent in Prince George's County, Maryland, which is, again, right outside of Washington, D.C. And then I was the first African-American superintendent in Nashville, Tennessee. I did that for 3 years before moving to Fordham University, where I was a visiting associate professor, and now I'm on the tenure track at Howard University, and I run the Urban Superintendents Academy. So we recruit people from around the country, particularly looking at people of color and women to get them prepared for the superintendency. And so I've been there for 3 years now.
Very cool.
All right.
Thank you all.
Thank
I think our time is up.
Yeah, I said, yeah.
They want to go
I
home.
want to listen.
Know my aunt,
You
Like
wanna
that,
go.
listen.
Judy Crane, she used to be.
John, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
John,
Here at Wisconsin.
Okay.
She was at the Board of Regents.
nice meeting you.
I'm not on the Board of Regents.
Right.
I'm on the
Meeting you.
advisory
Vice
board
president.
with the
Good luck.
Hey, everyone. You guys are, can we save the small talk for a little bit? I think we need to adjourn the meeting first. Sorry.
All right.
Thanks, Board Member Pearson. We'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second by Maya.
All those in favor? Good night, y'all.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you, and
Thank you
thank
so
you,
much.
Eagle River is beautiful.
It is. It's
thank
Maya
you.
said.
a great area. Good place to